Good afternoon. This is Neil Palacci with the Wealth Creator Company for Women, and I'm here this afternoon to talk to you about what is your retirement plan. Now, people talk to me about this all the time. By the way, just so that everybody knows, I said I was going to do this on Facebook Live as well, but unfortunately, although I'm set up on my laptop to have Facebook going at the same time, you can't do Facebook Live on a laptop. Apparently, it is a phone app only, so I'll have to get myself another phone for next time. So next Monday, I will be better prepared. So hi to everybody out there. It is a Monday afternoon at 5 p.m. on Monday, May the 2nd. The first 4 months of the year have gone. And I'm sitting in my car again as the dedicated person that I am, because I have an appointment right in this shopping center coming up in about 15 minutes. But I want to talk to you very quickly about what is your retirement plan. Now, this goes into, or the reason that I'm talking about this is because, number one, it's very interesting. Number two, people love to talk about retirement. Hopefully they'll be doing that one day. And number three, next Thursday, the 12th of May, I will be using that as my subject for the evening for my Women's Money Mastermind, which anybody that's a woman out there listening, you are certainly welcome to come. And I'll let you know where that is at another time. So let's get into the retirement vehicles. Now, look, what is the reality of retirement in this day and age? Retirement in the 21st century. Does retirement in the 21st century look anything like retirement did in the 20th century? Well, I guess to some degree the answer is yes, but the way that you retire has drastically changed, hasn't it? If you were around and retiring, let's say in 1960, 1970, 1980, maybe in 1990 even, and you had worked, which many people had, in large companies or even small companies for a number of years, often 20, 30, 40 years, they were getting the gold watch and the pension plan. And in some cases that's still happening, but mostly now in public education and public services, if you're a police officer, if you're a firefighter, if you are a teacher or some other kind of educator, if you're a state worker, those occupations still do have retirement plans, although I understand from some that some of those have also changed. But for the most part, for the rest of us, I suppose, those types of benefits have gone away. You're not going to get a pension plan probably, except for Social Security. Now, some people out there will say, oh my goodness, Social Security. Am I actually going to get Social Security? Well, that's a very good question. I think that if you are over 40, certainly over 50, you are going to get Social Security. If you're in your 20s or 30s, it's certainly questionable, although, boy, that seems to be a political hot potato. So honestly, I'm not sure if Social Security is going to be around in 30 or 40 years or not, because nobody really seems to tell the truth. Politicians not telling the truth? What do you mean? Oh, okay, don't get me started. So, look, the reality is, I suppose, that maybe it would be best not to rely on Social Security and just to simply say, hey, I am going to take care of this myself in whatever way I can. Now look, a retirement plan can be anything you want it to be. It can be done with real estate. It can be done with stocks and bonds. It can be done with cash. It can be done with a business. It can be done with pension plans and IRAs and SEP IRAs and simple IRAs and 401ks, and oh my goodness, the list never ends. And any of those products, any of those funds, any of those vehicles will help you to retire. And people will often ask me, well, what do you think is the best? Well, I don't think there is a best. I think there might be a best for you, And you do need to look individually to say, hey, should I have an IRA, or is real estate better for me? Or maybe my 401k, should I fund some kind of annuity? Should I buy stocks and bonds? I mean, you can make those decisions hopefully with a good advisor. And I would highly recommend that you have a good advisor, unless you are really into this stuff and you can spend many hours a week figuring this stuff out and learning what would make the most sense for you. I certainly think that it is important not to have your eggs in one basket, but as a very wise person told me many years ago, if you are going to have your eggs in one basket, watch that basket very carefully. I think for the most part, though, it's a good idea not to have all of your eggs in one basket. I do know that there are people that have tons and tons of money invested in real estate, just to use as an example. And real estate could be considered one basket, but on the other hand, if you've got apartment buildings and condos and homes in different parts of the country, for instance, it may well already be well diversified, even though it's all in the real estate market. And the same thing with stocks and bonds. So you've got to understand that you may have diversification within a portfolio, even though the portfolio itself is in the same market. So it kind of depends what your risk tolerance is, and that's a very important thing to understand. So when you are looking at the retirement picture, one of the things that you have to determine first is what your risk tolerance actually is. Now, risk tolerance, as far as I'm concerned, is determined by what I call the can you get to sleep, or are you woken up in the middle of the night theory. Of course, I'm somewhat joking, but if you wake up in a puddle of sweat in the middle of the night wondering whether or not your money is actually still there because it's invested in something that is beyond the risk that you can tolerate, then I would say that you're in the wrong investment. I think that that's a pretty good judge, believe it or not. I know it sounds kind of amusing, but it needs to be something that you're comfortable with. Well, mind you, beyond cash, because you'll be lucky if you can get 0.5% on cash, and that isn't going to get you very far. With inflation, even at 2%, 0.5% interest means that you're actually going backwards. That isn't going to be very helpful to you. And inflation can take a big bite out of your retirement future. The other question is, do you really want to retire? I know that there are people who retire from their primary occupation and then they go into a second occupation. They start another business, or they start their first business after having been in a job for many, many years. And it isn't the same as it used to be. When you're 65 or 70 years old, you're not an old person for the most part. If your health is good and you've done even a reasonable job of looking after yourself throughout your adult years, there's a strong possibility that you have such an amazing ability, a lot to offer the world in terms of your knowledge, experience, and wisdom, that to retire and do nothing for the next 30 to 40 years, or 30 to 35 maybe, is a bit of a waste. And I would say to you, get out there and do something that you enjoy, and maybe it's something that you can make some money doing, make some money as well while you're doing it. Now, from the standpoint of actual products, look at things like IRAs. They can be very, very valuable to you. Traditional IRAs where you get a deduction up front, but you do pay tax eventually. Roth IRAs where you don't get a deduction up front, but you don't pay any tax ever. That's very, very popular and should be very, very attractive to most people. Sometimes it really is better to give up the deduction today to get tax-free money tomorrow. And there are other instruments that'll do that. Cash value life insurance can do that if purchased at the right time. Don't buy that if you can't lock up your money. Don't buy that probably if you smoke. Don't buy that if you are too old or if you are unhealthy. So there are certain situations where it makes sense and others where it doesn't. The same for annuities. Now, I know that annuities get a bad rap, but they can be very attractive because of their tax-deferred feature. When you buy stocks, those are wonderful. Individual stocks are particularly good because, of course, you're not paying tax on any gain as the stock price rises, and hopefully it is rising. If it's going in the other direction, that's a whole nother story. When you buy mutual funds, you're going to pay tax on capital gains and dividend distributions in those years, in the actual current year, so you need to be aware of that. When you look at real estate, that can be very, very attractive and can give good returns as well as generate income, if not immediately down the road. So there's some excellent ways to make money in real estate, and particularly because you're able to, in many cases, leverage the real estate. In other words, borrow money to buy the real estate, let's say putting 20% down. So when you get a return on the entire value of the property, it creates a return that might be 4 or 5 times bigger as a result of the leveraging. It works, by the way, in the other direction. So if you take a loss, you can really lose big in real estate, and many people experienced that in 2008 and beyond when we had the real estate crash not that many years ago. But keep in mind that for all those people that lost money and lost their homes in many cases, which really is a terrible thing to have happened, there are also a ton of people that made money because they bought those properties at very low prices. And so there was some good that came out of it, if you want to look at it from that perspective. Of course, it depends if you were the investor, the buyer, or you were the seller, or the one that got foreclosed on or had to go bankrupt as a result. So you need to be careful, again, in those markets, but real estate can be very, very positive if done in the right way. Bonds can be interesting. Often misunderstood how they work, whether or not you can lose money when bonds appreciate versus when they're going down, what the difference is between a yield and a return on your money. So be very careful with that. There are potential tax opportunities there, because you can get bonds that have a tax exempt status. They don't get taxed on the state level or on the federal level. And then other bonds that get taxed on the state level but not on the federal level, and then the other way around. And then you've got bonds, of course, that are fully taxable on both sides, but generally they'll have a better rate of return. So there's a ton of different opportunities there, and I would just stress to you to make sure that you are looking at what makes the most sense for you. It doesn't matter what your brother, your sister, your mother, your uncle, and your neighbor and your cousin are doing. Their situations are most likely very, very different than yours. So get to a good financial advisor. Sit down with a money coach. You may actually know a money coach. I know one in particular myself. Yuck, yuck. So again, if you're divorced or widowed, or you're going through that kind of situation, then of course I'm your man. That's what I do. That's the market that I specialize in. But there are some really terrific financial advisors, investment-oriented realtors, people who specialize in commodities, people who specialize in real estate investment trusts, and all sorts of things. So if you want to hook up with my network, please give me a bell, give me a jingle, as they say. You can call me directly at 818-606-7327, or you can email me at neil@thewealthcreatorcompany.com, and you can go subscribe to my weekly newsletter at thewealthcreatorcompany.com. So I hope you have a great week. This will be on replay on Periscope for 24 hours, and then it will be it will be on YouTube, and I'll upload it to Facebook and tweet it and all that stuff. So if you need to take a look at it, please feel free to do so. This is Neil Palacci with the Wealth Creator Company for Women. Have a great week. Signing off.